Hey students, yesterday we went over how World War I started, and as I stated in that, it was pretty complicated. There was a lot of reasons, and we can't really attribute blame to one country. Each country had their own reasons as to contributing towards World War I. So today we're going to look at the map because a lot of changes happened after World War I that really started a lot of conflicts from World War II to some of the conflicts we're even dealing with in the Middle East today. I tried taking a video of the beginning of this today, but it just took a really long time to render, so instead you get a selfie. So, hope you enjoy it, and at the end of today, you will be required to make your own quiz for a map in World War I, and that quiz will have to show some of the changes that happened in Europe after World War I, and then you're also going to have to answer it. So it'll be kind of something that's up to you. I'll give you examples on how to do that. Alright guys, so let's begin. This first map that we're going to look at is a map of the Central Powers and the Allied Powers. You can see the Allied Powers are in red and the Central Powers are in yellow. A couple of these things would change throughout all World War II. Let me go over a couple of those. First off, Russia would exit in 1917 at the same time the United States would enter. Russia would enter the Russian Revolution, where they would get rid of the Tsar, which is known as the king, and enter into communism. Italy, as well, would also no longer be a central power, but would become an allied power. So, before we know it, we would have Germany, Austria-Hungary as the central powers, and the one thing that's not on here either is the central powers, which are over here, the Turkish Empire, and they were known as the Ottomans. So you could see a couple neutral areas where Belgium, and if you remember from yesterday's lesson, Germany would go through Belgium to try and get to France, and with the Schifflin plan, and then England would join in the war as well. So Germany was fighting two sides, and most of the war would happen in this area, right here on the Western Front, because once Russia exited, a couple of these countries up in this area would be created. So it's important to note because these countries that I just circled would be powers that Russia and Germany would fight over, and they would also be countries that would enter into the Cold War as we go on. It's also important to know that these countries down here, Serbia, Romania, Bulgaria, would all become known as one country, known as Yugoslavia. So this is what happened in World War I. That was really started, for the most part, again, down here at Sarajevo, with the assassination of Franz Ferdinand by Gabriel Princip. So as you can see, this map looks really different than today. Let's see, what don't we have here? Well, we do have Austria-Hungary, but we don't have the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Germany is split up like that. There's another country on the right. We would go over here. This is split up as well. So we have three countries here. And the Middle East, if you notice down here, the Turkish Empire or the Ottomans have a huge empire. And this is where Israel would be, and Saudi Arabia and Iraq. You also notice one big country here. There would be Tunisia with the... So this map is very different. And so World War I would shape that. And let's take a look at how it did that. This is a map after World War I ended. So now you can see the Austrian-Hungarian Empire is really broken up. They're split into two. Yugoslavia, all those Bulgaria, still Romania, but Serbia and Slovenia and Bosnia are all split up. Italy as well. Switzerland's still there. Notice these countries too. Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, East Prussia would belong to Germany, obviously. And Poland's a new creation. So Poland, in all honesty, has for a long time been really a land that's been gone after between Germany and the USSR, or Russia at the time. So that would explain why Poland would be a key territory that Hitler would go after in World War II. So it's really important, like I said, to understand this, because this map is going to shape everything that is going to go on for the next 100 years. There would be a lot of ethnic tensions in this area, because now we have Yugoslavia is holding Serbia and Bosnia, but that's not to say that people don't like each other there. And so there's going to be a civil war in this area, really starting in the late 80s, going to the late 90s. So just take a look and study the differences. I'll pull them back up actually. So again, here are the differences. Let's first look at this one. Just look at how many countries were created out of World War I. And you can also reference your textbook if you need to. On this, between 647, that would look at this map, and 672 will look at that map. So you can see it in your textbook. There's two differences. But you can see here in this area, all this area becomes really this area. Austria-Hungary, one big empire. Now it's Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Austria. At the conclusion of World War I. Germany, in this side, is this big area, and here we can see some of the land is lost here that borders Russia, and there's also this little tiny thing of East Prussia. And that's because you might be wondering, well, why did all this happen? Why do we have these differences in maps? Well, remember, nationalism was a huge reason that led to World War I. So after World War I ended, at the treaty signing, people were like, well, we need to give everyone as much of a homeland as possible. And so they created these borders, and these borders were very arbitrarily drawn. They weren't drawn with much care, because these people lived in pockets. They didn't live necessarily in areas that were defined. So it was kind of tough for them to draw it, but then when you have a country that's made up of people that don't like each other, it creates problems. Not to say they shouldn't get around, but also Turkey's down here. Again, that was known as the Ottoman Empire. That's when the establishment of Turkey would happen. But nationalism was a driving factor behind making these new states. And the battles that shaped this war also had a role in determining where land would be. So, for example, if we look here in France, you can see there's this little section right in here in World War I. Right in there. If you notice here on this map, this is actually belongs to France now. It cuts in a little bit sharper than it does on the map in 1914. And that area is called the Alsace-Lorraine, and it's been an area that has been up until really after World War I that was fought over between Germany and France. And today, Luxembourg is in that area, which acts as a buffer state behind these two. Just like Belgium acted as a buffer state between France and Germany in 1839. So the wars do create borders, and they do create states, and that's the reason that we have certain countries that exist now rather than others. Alright, so what I want you to do for tonight is to create a quiz, like I said, that asks some of these differences, or asks you to show some of the countries that participate in World War I. This is a practice map that I made, and it's got a couple things here. So you could create a matching test if you want, that asks you to match up F with something that you describe. Or you can create a multiple choice question, say, all right, F is what area? Is it Germany, Poland, Alsace-Lorraine, or Italy. And the answer would be the Alsace-Lorraine in this area. So F, for example, is Alsace-Lorraine. You don't have to do battles, but some of your maps show battles. For example, B is Verdun, the Battle of Verdun. Corporetto is the Battle is H. And that battle was certainly a battle that Germany really handily defeated Italy. G is Yugoslavia. And E, you can see E is actually pointing to that, would be Sarajevo. J would be Poland. C would be Latvia. A would also be a battle, that would be Tannenberg. Tannenberg is where the Russian army was handily defeated, and that was one reason that led Russia to exit the war really quick. I would be the Danellis Pass. That was a battle where the Allies were defeated by the Turks. So it's not like the Allies had the upper hand the whole time. In fact, this war ended in a stalemate, like I said. So it's tough to say who won, really. Although Germany did surrender, so to speak. So you can create a map like that where people have to label the things, and that could be a matching. You could say, what country is D? And then you give, matching question where people have to match up the country to D. Or you can say, you could do multiple choice questions where what battle happened at location A? Tannenberg, Corporetto, Verdun, and then people have to choose one. Remember, you're going to have to answer your own question. So let's go to the map. I'm going to give you this blank one, and you can label whatever you want here. Again, use pages 647 and 672 as a reference if you need to. Just remember, this is the Mediterranean, Black Sea, Caspian Sea. If you see this country, that's Iraq now. So this is a map after World War I happened, and you can put choices wherever you want. So you could say, is point A, what country is point A? Is it England, Germany, Poland, or France? The answer is France. A couple requirements here. One, you must have 10 questions, okay? I ran out of space on that. 2, questions must be answered, but they also must deal specifically with changes before or after World War I. All right. So it could be, if you were to label this area, for example, which was the Alsace-Lorraine, you could say, which area on the map did Germany give up after World War I? Was it A, B, C, D, depending on the points that you gave? And then the third requirement is I want you to focus on land. It's not really some of a requirement, but is an emphasis. Focus on land, not mountain ranges or not physical geographical features, but political geographic features. You also don't have to do battles. They're not too key, but if you want to do one or two, that's fine, but I don't want to see any more than that. All right, this assignment's worth 20 points, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys have. Remember, you need to create the quiz and answer your own questions as well.